We're excited to be co-hosting today's session with our partners at Huntress. And today we will uncover just the most common cybersecurity myths and take a closer look at what's really happening behind today's cyber threats. But before we get started, I would like to mention that we are doing 3 giveaways during today's event. So everyone who stays until the end will be automatically entered to win one of these following prizes. And Ethan, I believe, yes, you got it up there. So we're giving away a 20-ounce Yeti Rambler, a Huntress Timbuktu backpack, and a 35-ounce Yeti Rambler with a straw. So we'll be announcing the winners right after the Q&A session. So definitely make sure to stick around until the end for your chance to win. So now I would like to introduce our speakers for today's session. Joining us from Huntress is Ethan Tancredi. He is the technical account manager. And from Netranom, we have Dawn Peel, our cybersecurity operations manager. I'm going to hand it over to Ethan and Dawn to share a bit about their backgrounds before we jump into the presentation. And just a quick reminder, we are going to have a designated Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions come up along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get to them. So, all righty, I'm going to hand it over to Ethan and Dawn.
All right. Well, thank you, Elaine, for that intro. Yes, I am Ethan Tancredi. I've been with Huntress about 3.5 years. Before that, I was actually 17 years on the managed service provider space. I started as a tech, crawling under desks, fixing computers, and learned a ton and got interested in cybersecurity during that time frame. And one of the cool things that I get to do while at Huntress is educate the general public about things they need to know with regards to cybersecurity with great partners like Netranom. So I'm excited to be here to educate some of the audience about things we are seeing, things to be aware of, because there are definitely a lot of myths that are easy to believe out there. So, but I'm excited to be here with Dawn. And Dawn, if you want to, I'll kick it over to you.
Dawn, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? All right, so Don Peel here. I have been with Netranom for about 4 years. As Alina said, I'm the cyber operations manager. I've got a background in law enforcement and network administration, project management. I was previously an IT director, but coming from a career in law enforcement, I wanted to find a way to still provide security and enhance public safety. So cybersecurity seemed to be the right path. So that's where we are today with me. I'm helping customers for Netranom as they embark upon their cybersecurity journeys.
And so as we talk about that journey, like the first thing, knowledge is power. I come from an age where that was like a motto and cartoons and things. But like first myth I just want to disabuse people of is the whole concept that, hackers are these nerds who wear hooded sweatshirts and write code in their mom's basements. The truth of the matter is that this is actually much more sophisticated than that of what's going on. That, in fact, there is a cybercrime industry, and it is a growth industry. On my screen that I'm sharing, like, these are just some of the numbers. These are coming from FBI. Every year gets reports of cybercrime. And so these are pulling from their latest reports. So this came out in early 2025 about the 2024 year. But in 2024, 16 billion with a B of reported cybercrime losses to the FBI. So this isn't even things that aren't reported. This is what was simply reported to them. That was up from 12.5 billion in 2023. So you're talking about, $4 billion increase, basically a 25% increase in the cybercrime threat actor business. I think there are many businesses out there that would be very happy to have that kind of growth, to put it mildly. and they business email compromise. This number was from 2023, about $137,000 is the cost of a business email compromise. That number continues to grow, and that's all sorts of tricks that happen when threat actors take over your mailboxes. And unfortunately, as technology continues to advance, as things like large language models are used, and so generative AI becomes a tool not only for people to use, but also threat actors, like it is going to become more difficult for businesses to protect themselves around. And like they can earn business money all sorts of ways. Like cyber criminals, they evolve towards specialization, just like any small, medium-sized business realizes that some of the best ways to monetize is to become a specialist. This is an eye chart, lots of different things on this particular thing on my screen, but like what I want to call out is just like these are all different ways somebody could enter the cybercrime ecosystem and make money. They could be an initial access broker, basically get credentials, break into an environment, and then sell that to somebody else. They could be a malware developer, creating malware that is going to run and sell that. They could be a ransomware crew who is doing the ransomware, but they could be the cryptocurrency people. So it is all sorts of ways that this can be used and exploited by criminals. And they have all sorts of tools at their advantage. Phishing as a service. Don, I am sure, and Netranom, I am sure, has talked to those of their clients, and maybe you're aware of like software as a service as this key thing. The threat actors have the equivalent of a software as a service. So phishing as a service, where you have a dashboard that looks almost like an Amazon web store in some ways, that you get your balances and how many scam tokens you have. And they have a new release, Caffeine Sender V6 has arrived, that you are able to pay for these types of enhancements in your attacks. They can do ransomware as a service, so you don't need to necessarily write your own ransomware. You can go to one of these vendors and purchase their ransomware as a service kit. Some of these places actually outsource their call centers to, make it easier for you as a threat actor or a criminal syndicate. How do I make money with talks? They are doing advertisements to these dark web marketplaces. They have premium subscription services, et cetera. It is all about getting money, not only from legitimate businesses, but to keep it going. And then they train their employees. I would say in some ways, they train their employees better than some companies do. They'll have things like handbooks. This is a copy out of one group's handbook who got taken down by the federal government. But like these handbooks proliferate out there. They teach a intro level attacker how to go find and explore that company. Think about it as if you were having a business development person who wanted to get you new customers. The threat actor is going to the Google. They're being told, all right, put in the site, put in plus revenue, and see what you get. And also go check out, Zoom Info, go to DNB, Rocket Rich, right? Use these publicly defined sources to find out what these places are. And then it starts to give the attacker some basic commands they can do, as well as over on the left-hand side of my screen are all of these tools that they have that are pre-bundled for them to be better at it. It is definitely a major syndicate with its ecosystem so that they can take part in that $16 billion industry. And Don, I'd like you to kind of jump in here maybe and talk about some of these myths that are so important to bust, that we hear people talk about, my company isn't a target, or they have nothing of value, or it's too cumbersome. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Sure. You know, a lot of the clients that when we first engage them, that's exactly the myth that they believe in, is that we're not big enough. We don't have anything of value. And sometimes it's hard to recognize when you're not involved in that space that you are being watched all the time. Just like, you know, they tell you there's cameras everywhere watching you all the time. There's thieves, they're cyber criminals. They're always on the hunt for a new victim. They don't care how large you are. They don't care how small you are. In fact, a lot of Netranom's customers have come from the smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses that have reached out to us because they've been breached. And you talk about that, you know, that $6 billion plus, you know, that's shared across the spectrum. And what they're doing is autonomous in many cases. They scan the web for open ports on your networks, and they like you talked about, they have tools that scan LinkedIn, different job sites, and find out the names of your employees to scam, what their positions are. The bigger organizations like the banks, the larger banks, Amazon, they have a very robust set of tools and systems in place to protect themselves. And think of a thief that's driving through a neighborhood and he sees 10 houses that have no security and one big nice house that has armed guards, fences, and just cameras, everything to protect that house. They can make plenty of money breaking into the 10 unprotected houses and leave that bigger house alone or for a bigger job later. That's kind of how they do cyber breaches with companies. And that's why it's important for all of us to be aware that we're a target.
Yeah, and what I talk about, the tagline I use is this one on the screen, which is every business is a target. You just might not be big enough for a headline, right? Like a small, like I know I was talking to a managed service provider based out of southern Louisiana and the oil and gas fields down there. And he talked how a business that does basically trailers for the oil fields down there, where they suffered a business email compromise that cost them $500,000 in losses from invoices that, you know, got redirected, that they were not able to recover that money from. And, you know, that small business with, you know, 20 to 50 employees, you know, suddenly that owner had to figure out how he was going to make payroll with these things. And nope, it wasn't big enough for a headline. Maybe the local news had it, but it wasn't going to make a national story like a MGM or something else being hit. And to your point, right, they know that the large enterprises can purchase the tools or have tooling, and so they try and go after those small businesses.
Well, and Ethan, you touched on the value thing again, you know, and like I said, a lot of the customers say we don't really have anything that valuable or desirable, but most laws, regulations, standards, they're written based on impact to others. And often the value of an organization is the data they hold and the impact that you can have either on the community, your constituents, your customers, and your employees. If you have employees on payroll, you have their personal data, you have the financial information. That is the starting point right there before you even start branching out into those that you serve and you know where your reputation for your company lies. These are all things that people don't understand or value.
Yep, no, exactly. And let's talk a little bit real quick, not to get too technical in the weeds, but like there are multiple places where you can try and interrupt those attackers, whether it's in their reconnaissance, their weaponization, right, delivery. And so like this is where security layers matter. Netranom has multiple layers and multiple different products to try and protect against this, all of these different places that an attacker comes in. And it's just important to understand that there is no silver bullet, one solution fits all, is really what I want people to realize through this. That, you know, it'd be nice to have that silver bullet, but that doesn't exist, Don, unless Don, you've figured out some silver bullet that I've never heard of.
Not yet.
Yeah. And so like defense is challenging. And so, what I want you to come through with this is that although it's challenging, and maybe this can even be a little overwhelming and scary, there are things you can do. Partnering with an expert like a Netranom is key because they can implement, comprehensive security solutions. Whether that is doing asset inventories, basic IT hygiene like patching, MFA, reducing attack surfaces, and even helping you plan, whether that's for an incident response plan, that's an IRP, or a business continuity plan, or just monitoring, detecting, and responding in those environments. There's a lot you can do with a good partner that is going to remove those low-hanging fruits and make your house harder and less attractive to break into for a threat actor. Um, and I wish I could say every attack we see out there comes through some unique, malware attack vector, but that's not the case. The threat actors are going after the basics, which is why, you need somebody who understands that process. Don, anything you want to add into about the importance of doing the basics?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned partnering with a company like Netranom. I'll be the first to say that it's just due diligence to do something, and whether it's taking on a managed IT service like ourselves, or hiring somebody that can help you make sure that you're protecting your organization. It's just due diligence, and that's the first step, is to recognize that you have to be in that mindset.
Yeah, you have to be in that mindset, thinking through this all the way. It is critical that you understand apples to apples comparisons, if you will, as well, through there. And one of those basics that I say, and I know this is part of Netranom's base package, is, you need to have managed EDR solution and endpoint detection and response. And how that layers on top of, you'll have a next generation antivirus. And what that's doing is it's looking for signature, it's based on signatures, it's trying to stop known bad. Endpoint detection and response is looking for examples of ways a threat actor could attack a machine or into a network. That is really what is key. You need to be looking because the threat actors are learning how to pivot around and use things of tools off of machines, etc., so that they can't be detected by a next generation antivirus. And the managed part is key because you need somebody looking at this things 24/7 who is a specialist in that. That Huntress has our own security operations center. We do a around the world staffing model, US, Australia, and the UK, where we have trained analysts who see these, indicators of compromise and can investigate and send that out. So, calling out the managed EDR, that should be a standard you have protecting your machines, from the get-go. It no longer is a nice to have, unfortunately, as the threat actors continue to evolve. But also, as businesses have started to deploy more and more EDRs, endpoint detection response solutions out there, the largest attack surface is still humans. Your people are going on the web. They are, they have LinkedIn profiles that the threat actors will target, and, or they will get calls from them. Like, this is where the threat actors are doing that research, and the humans are that massive attack surface. Through there. And you need to be aware that your people are a massive part of that. Don, do you want to talk all about that, or some of the challenges that, are
Yeah,
there
I'll
for
go.
the identity?
I'll throw out another myth, and we hear this a lot from managers and business owners, and that it sometimes sounds insulting whenever you say your employees can cause your organization to become a victim to cybercrime. And sometimes the response is, our employees are much more intelligent than that. They would, they've got degrees, they've got certifications, they've got years of experience, and that's not what we're talking about. The cyber criminals don't care about intelligence. They care about getting into the organization. What they do know about intelligence when it comes to the human being is that the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be in an important position. If you're in an important position, you're probably busy. So with that knowledge, a bad guy is going to reach out to that person, use all the common protocols that they do for phishing campaigns that, we probably don't have time to get into today, but I'll use one like a sense of urgency, and we've got to have something done right away. It came from somebody very important or whatever. And these busy people, they might be very intelligent, but they're busy, and they'll take the bait. They'll click the file. They'll click the link or open the file, and the next thing you know, we're off to the races with a breach or a business email compromise or whatever. I mean, there's just so many ways that they can get in. If you've got 50 employees, there's 50 chances. They only have to be right with one of them. We have to be right all the time with blocking these guys, but they only have to be right once with duping one of your employees. And that's where and why the human is considered one of the weakest links in cybersecurity.
And we all are using that email addresses all the time, to your point, Don, right? And the other thing I would say is you're totally right that they're actually, I would say they're targeting the smarter, more well-educated, because they know those people are going to probably have access to more valuable data through it. And this is also where those large language model and AI tools come to play, because now, back in the day, Don, you and I are about the same age. We remember the Nigerian prince email scams that were, bad English grammar, weird suppositions that, oh, we found, that a long lost relative of yours, right? But now with large language models, they could do the research, plop that information in, and we've seen threat actors using large language models to craft these attack conversations, and they might do multiple conversations before they, quote unquote, sink the hook into a victim. So it is very sophisticated, and this is where that slowing down becomes important, because they know in modern business, people are busy. We're multitasking. We have deadlines. And, in that identities, right, you can lose data because they can compromise it. They can get unauthorized access, see who else is in your business, where else they could pivot through there. And Huntress does have we call it an identity threat detection response solution that is stopping these attacks from Microsoft 365, combating, threat actors logging in from other countries or tricking users into what we call rogue apps, which are applications that give access to the mailboxes, or creating email rules to try and hide emails, so that, we're trying to remove the threats so that you avoid the business implications on it at the end of the day. Because and Don, I don't know if you want to take a moment and talk about it is kind of a risk reward thing you need to always think about through this, right? On it, that you have to, there is some things you give up by having more security, but it's all about understanding your tolerance for that risk.
Well, yeah, I mean, my motto is security is inconvenient, and I think most people that work in cybersecurity appreciate that and probably go by that same motto. But at the same time, when I'm talking to customers, I mean, we're looking at what a system right now that protects email, and it does a very good job, and it's really good with preventing email takeovers or account takeovers. But it's up to the business owner and their key stakeholders to decide that they want to implement a control, that they want to invest in cybersecurity. As long as they're doing what's best for their company and they're making those decisions based on objective research and risk analysis and assessments, then you're going to be on good footing, but you have to understand what these tools are, and you have to
Yeah.
understand what you need, how these tools can mitigate the threats that are always looming against your organization.
Yeah. And that's where, partnering with you all at Netranom, I know you do regular kind of business meetings with your clients, right? That helps because you can have those conversations and understand if things have changed in the business, right? And maybe there is now a large contract that maybe you need to be more paying attention to the risks or something has come on. And you talked about security can be inconvenient, right? So we convince the users to use MFA, multi-factor authentication. This is where you have usually an app on your phone that you have to put in a code when you sign into a site. So maybe you're protected from 365, you think. Well, I can tell you the threat actors have actually come up with ways to destroy MFA. There's a tool called Evil Jinx, and there's other ones similar to it. And I got a little cartoon that I'll quickly walk through that shows kind of how this works. But what happens? A threat actor out there, they spin up a website, Evil Jinx kind of website, and it looks like a login page to Microsoft. So it has a look and feel to that. They will then send an email to a user. This was actually an example of one through our security awareness training that got sent to a phishing simulation that got sent to all the employees at Huntress. We get stock options, and somebody sent one to us saying, hey, your new options are there. And I can tell you lots of people at our company, busy, smart people, click that link. I thankfully was on the road and missed this email, so I did not get clicked on it. But this is what the threat actors will have done that research. What would have happened in this case? We would have then gotten to this site. Oh, hey, you have to authenticate with Microsoft. All right, yeah, that's normal. Let me put in my username and password. The Evil Jinx site grabs that credentials, passes it on to the actual Microsoft page as well. So to the user, seems all normal. Then Microsoft says, hey, you know what? This user needs MFA. User, give me your MFA code. And the Evil Jinx site sends that back over to the user. Hey, give me your MFA. The user says, yep, I'm used to this. I have, a token code that I'll put in. And Evil Jinx sends it on to Microsoft. So you could log in successfully even on some of these. And you'll log in, you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird to redirect, something happened, but I'm in, nothing, no worry about it. But what will happen is Microsoft will send a session token to the Evil Jinx server. And they normally will send that token also onto the end user so they don't realize it. But that token, the threat actor can grab. It's basically a bunch of code. They can copy and paste that into their browser, and they are immediately logged into the mailbox. And so this is where you need solutions like an ITDR from Huntress that can detect these adversary in the middle attacks. Other things that the threat actors are doing, we've talked about how they're doing research. So they do something called OSINT, open source intelligence. This is an example where the threat actor saw a vulnerability in a medical viewing software. About a year ago, announcement came out from CISA, which is a government agency, and saying, hey, this needs to be patched. You could get remote access to machines if you didn't have this running. The threat actors did some malvertising on Google Ads, so they can buy ads just like anybody else or get higher up in the search engines, if you will. And what they did is they did something what we call typo squatting, where they made this website very similar to microdicom.com, except they put some L's in and got a .info, but they cloned the website and then put it, hey, update microdicom, and in their ads, they became first. Now, one of the things that was interesting when they cloned the site, the legitimate site actually had one of those, and we've all probably come across it, those websites that have like lots of pop-ups about ads, click here to download this software and serving up all these ads. The threat actor in this one was like, yeah, that's too obvious. I'm not going to put there. Nobody's going to click my links. They're going to think it's a malicious site. But they repackaged that legitimate executable with a software in the back end that would call out to their threat actor. So those are ways that they will try and use Google websites and, cloning to try and trick you. Or, this is my Danger Will Robinson shout out. They'll use what we call fake CAPTCHA. So we're all used to prove you're a human, right? Choose the pictures with a stoplight or something like that. Other ways you choose that you're a human, do some math. Well, one of the things they will do is compromise a website. So I've seen this where a doctor's office website was compromised. I saw a shipping authority in the state of Georgia off the coast. Their website for schedules of cargo ships, et cetera, was compromised. And they pop up a window, say, hey, to get to this, website, more information, prove you're a human. Well, if you are on a Windows machine, you hit Windows R, that actually does a run command. And from there, the Control V is a paste command. They will inject into your browser onto the clipboard a command that will run malware and call it down and try and infect your machine. And it will bypass a lot of security tools out there. And so like these are ways they are trying to use social engineering, as Don was talking about, you're going fast to capture your users. And this is why that security awareness training program is so key. You want to talk a little bit about SAT and why your thoughts around this, Don?
Sure. I'll start with my history with security awareness training. Back when I was a director for one of the local municipalities, our security awareness training was once a year, and we hired speakers to come in, and we gathered everybody in a large conference room, and you had to attend, and that was your security awareness training, which back then, 10, 15 years ago was due diligence. You were doing the basics. And it was good enough, but it was still painful keeping track of who attended, who actually absorbed the training and understood it. And then there's people off on vacation. There was people that, working the road, that were driving the salt trucks or whatever. They couldn't come to this training. And you either had makeup sessions or video recordings. It just didn't work well. So you go a little bit further into it. You're now doing YouTube videos, so you can get these. Here's your training. And you can mark on your if you're doing cyber insurance back in those days, you can mark on your cyber insurance form. Yes, we provide cybersecurity training. Well, the times have changed a lot, especially in the past 3 or 4 years. And regulators, insurance companies, they're requiring more advanced, more formal training now. What they want is a program that can be pushed out to all users. They want a program that can be tracked, the attendance. They want phishing simulations to be involved in these programs to make sure that are kind of tied back to the training to see if the people are learning from this information they've been given. And they want it to be reportable so that you can, when you're answering questions on an audit form, if you're in a financial institution, a lot of our credit unions have NCUA audits, they have to answer, yes, we provide cybersecurity awareness training. Well, what does that entail? No longer is it okay to just check the box that we have it. You have to be able to solidify what they got. You have to be able to make that tangible to the auditor or the insurance company. And you could always send out the YouTube videos and say, yeah, we provide training. But when stuff goes wrong and you didn't provide the complete and accurate answer, you're not going to be covered by your cyber insurance company, or you're going to be hit with penalties from that regulator or auditing firm or whatever that stakeholder is that had an interest in those answers. So that's the one side of cyber training, cyber awareness training. The other is strengthening that human and making them take a moment to slow down when they're busy and look at that phishing email and recognize it as a phishing email. When they take that call from a scammer, recognize that it's a scam. When that text pops up on their phone, hey, this looks like a scam. even when it's not, if they're second guessing and questioning, cyber training is working. And that's the objectives of today's cyber training programs.
Yeah. And I mean, Huntress totally believes in what we do for our security aware training is story based. So humans are wired for stories. And that's a key thing. And Don, you hit it on nail on the head. It needs to be regular and frequent so that users are engaged. Ours are short 10-minute little stories that talk about threats that are happening currently. So it also educates people about the current threats, and it is keeping people up to date as well as doing those phishing simulations. The one thing I always call out, you don't want to have a cybersecurity awareness training or culture where it's punitive for people, in their training, maybe they clicked on the phishing link. You don't want to hold people out. You want to educate and make them better so that they will report. To your point, Don, they need to slow down, call it out. It's better to be safe than sorry as we go through all of this. And I know we're getting a little close on time, so I'm going to kind of move us along from here. Another thing that you need to be thinking about, okay, you've put in manage EDR, you've put in maybe an identity threat detection, maybe you've done SAP. Like, how else do you do these things? Potentially more tools cause more problems, but you do need layers. And we talked about the importance of layers of different tools in environments. And this is where a SIM solution, a SIM is for those of you who don't know what it is, it's a log centralization source so that you can send things like firewall logs or endpoint logs to a centralized collection repository. The power of that is twofold. One, you already talked about it from, credit unions, Don, reporting compliance. A lot of industries require some sort of holding on to records for X amount of time. A SIM is going to help with that. The second thing that Huntress sees on it is threat detections, that we can actually, there are things that will show up in logs that might not show up in our EDR or ITDR solutions as we're looking for tradecraft activities, but the logs might show it. And so we see where SIM is in place, and SIM would have a detection that it fires usually about 30 minutes faster than on something with just EDR. And so SIM gives, when minutes matter, which it does, as these threat actors are pivoting more and more and going faster and faster, SIM gives our SOC team and therefore Netranom a faster time to respond, to kick a threat actor out of an environment. We can do things like isolate hosts, log users out of accounts and disable them as they get investigated, but those are where SIM becomes key. And really, the key thing that I think I want everybody to understand is layers of security are important. You need to be, from Huntress's aspect, you need to have all of these different things become more and more important, especially as your risk goes up. As you have more valuable things you are protecting, you need managed EDR, ITDR, but that SAT, Don's right, in my opinion, for dollars spent, that's one of the key things that one wants to be looking at. And my message to you, hopefully what you are hearing from this is the importance that cyber criminals are out there. They are attacking organizations. Security now is a necessity, not a luxury. If you have a business that is connected to the internet, which virtually, I don't know of a business out there that isn't, you don't have a choice at this point. Those attackers, because you don't have to worry about, quote unquote, thieves in your neighborhood. It is now the world. And so this is why it is a necessity as they pivot and look to increase their revenue streams. You need to be prepared. And also just be aware that security is a journey. Working with Netranom, working with Don, you're never going to get to a destination. It will simply be an evolving journey, is it? And Don, maybe talk about that journey with some of your bundles that you all have.
Well, I'll touch on this real quick. The thing that I mentioned earlier in the presentation is, cyber security is inconvenient. And the reason it's inconvenient is because it's mostly intangible. It's hard for people to understand the value of it, and then they have to deal with the nuances of MFA and alerts and all these different things that security controls put into their lives. And they have to have it. So what do? You know, you got to get cyber insurance. You got to have these tools. You got to, you know, where do you start? You know, going back to the due diligence. You know, you've done your homework. You know, you need this stuff. You know, you need to do something, but you don't have a team of network engineers and cybersecurity experts and lawyers, and you don't have all these people at your avail to do what you need to do to be safe, to keep your organization safe. And if you do, you're going to piecemeal it, and it's going to be expensive. And that's kind of what, you know, Netranom decided. We've dealt with this with a lot of our customers. Some of our customers need less, some need more, some need a lot of more of the advanced tools. What we've done is tried to find a way to make it more affordable by kind of doing like the bundle option. You know, we're buying these services ourselves, just like the bad guys do. You know, we're buying these Huntress's products and we're making them available to the customers that we have. And when I say like the bad guys, they're buying the applications to do bad stuff. We're providing the applications to do good stuff to protect against it. And that's what these are. Password manager, you know, just this morning talked to a customer about how important a password manager is. She's like, oh God, we really need that. We need that bad. And I started to explain to her how it works. She said, I don't care, sign me up. I didn't even know this was available. Password manager, you know, takes away the spreadsheets of passwords. It helps protect you against phishing sites. It's just it's a really good low hanging fruit tool. Multi-factor authentication. People think they have it on their email account, their Microsoft 365, that they're well protected. That couldn't be further from the truth. You need device level MFA that protects everything on the other side of your screen, on the other side of your keyboard. You need MFA like that. These are the kind of tools that we have found that are very useful in protecting organizations. The SIM that you talked about, Ethan, that's something that comes with a security operations center. It's not just a tool, it's a team of security experts that, if you imagine the room with the TV monitors on the wall and the guys at the keyboards, and it's dark and graphs are everywhere and binary codes flying across the screens. It might not be quite that dramatic, but that's what a SOC looks like, and that's what a SIM comes with. A lot of our customers that are in critical infrastructure, banking, healthcare industry, they have to have one of these. That's why we've included this. This has become a no-brainer in the modern fight against cybercrime. And we've hit on security awareness training, so I'll just skip over that and talk about network monitoring real quick. Network monitoring is something that that is included in this bundle right here. This is a Netranom Cyber Bundle. All of it, you get all these things in this bundle. And I'm not making a sales pitch. Just, it sounds like it, but this is what comes in this bundle, and it's an example of the tools that we offer. But anyway, the network monitoring keeps an eye on your network, the flow of traffic that's going back and forth in your network. It not only looks for anomalies or suspicious behavior, like large chunks of data are suddenly leaving your network at 3 a.m. It also looks at performance metrics. You know, if you have a switch or a firewall that goes down or a port that goes bad in one of your devices, these types of tools detect that, and they help keep your business up and running and notify like our network operations center, hey, this switch in this customer's office in this location has gone down. We're on it before the customer even comes into work that morning and realizes they've got an outage. So those are the kind of tools that are offered in bundles, and this is a way for customers today and business owners today to find a way to grasp the needs, the most common needs for modern and advanced cybersecurity without having to do tons of research and hiring a bunch of people to get it done.
Yeah. This is, I think, you know, what I would say is that bundle, it gets you some great additional layers of protection without a lot of inconvenience. We were talking how security can be a
Exactly.
quote unquote inconvenience. These are very, I would say, in some ways, lessen the inconvenience of security with especially how these link up together from there. Elena, I'm on just one monitor, and I feel like this would be a great time for us to maybe, answer some questions. So are there some
Yeah,
questions from the audience, either in chat or that came in through Q&A that we can answer for people? I know
sure.
we're probably got another like 10 minutes or so I think this is a good amount of time to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to just mention, we had in the chat that, one person put, I'm sure many in our group don't realize that Windows plus R is the run command, and that I have never considered a fake CAPTCHA and can't wait to share that information with our team. And then I never considered that either. I just told my executive director about, and that's something that grabbed my attention too, is you just automatically click it and you think, oh, this is CAPTCHA. It's to protect, it's to make sure that I'm not fake, that I'm not a bot, when in reality, people are using that against us too.
Yeah,
So
and what's fascinating about this is they actually can detect what operating system you're using. So if it's a Mac that you go to that same page, they will actually change it so it does the same kind of equivalent on a Mac side, but you will do the Mac command to open up the terminal window, which is the way it is similar kind of power on a Mac. So it is, to me, and I'm in this on a regular basis, it's crazy how well they develop their attacks to try and trick you in on it.
yeah, that is crazy. One question is, and this might be for you, Dawn, how much does the cybersecurity bundle cost, and is it something that can be purchased separately?
The to answer the cost part of it, it's $20 per user per month, flat rate. So it's a really good deal. If you look at all those products and you went out and tried to buy each one of those services yourself, I mean, you're probably going to pay that somewhere around that price per user for any one of those products. As far as the availability, we don't retail it per se. We don't just resell these products. You have to be a part of the Netranom family to take advantage of that particular bundle. Like I said, this is just some of the service we offer, but you have to be, and I think most MSPs will do something similar to this, but some of them do all or nothing. You have to buy all their products or nothing. But the way we are is we have a lot of really small customers as well as the larger customers. So we provide what's called NetraCare, which is your basic IT support with a whole lot of cybersecurity products, the ITDR and the Huntress protection that Ethan talked about. But that's the basic. These are more advanced tools here that you can opt for. We won't retail them and just sell them to you and you walk away with them. We have to manage them for you. So in order for us to manage them, we have to have access to your systems, and that's what NetraCare is. So you basically would be a NetraCare customer for whatever fee that is based on the size of your organization, and then from there, you could opt for something like this if you needed the more advanced bundle.
And
Great.
I'll just chime in there. The other reason why it totally makes sense you're doing this as advanced bundle is it's not like you can just put those on without that foundational security place and being there. This is like, so it's critical to get those what I'll call the low-hanging fruit set up through your standard package and then add this on.
Yeah. And I think we have time for one more question here.
All right.
And that is, how often should businesses be reviewing or updating their cybersecurity plan?
I'll jump in with this one, at least from what I've seen at Huntress, is that you need to be reviewing it at least every 6 months. Quarterly would be great, but I think depending on your business, that's could be almost too frequent, but you need to be looking at every 6 months. And I've heard horror stories of things where people haven't looked at their plans, because these plans should include things like your incident response plan, like how would you respond in an incident, your business continuity, because although Netranom can do a fabulous job of, restoring servers that are down quickly, maybe you have to keep all the systems offline as they are doing a deeper dive into how the threat actor got into an environment. And so how do you keep your business running, ingesting money? And so that becomes, I would say, something you want to discuss at least every 6 months. Are there key employees who've left your company, or new employees who come in who maybe need to be educated about what your process is? Maybe you have some new contracts that you need to be aware of because you've suddenly became a bigger target. The example I use to help people kind of understand this is, many people remember that Target had a large breach about 10 years ago, and that actually happened through an HVAC vendor. And so, I doubt that HVAC vendor 10 years ago was having conversations with their IT provider about, oh yeah, we're now servicing Target, and we need to maybe take extra steps because we have more risk, because we've now become part of their supply chain that somebody could attack through. So I think at least 6 months is a minimum that I would want to be having these kind of conversations with Netranom to make sure that, not only is our plans prepared, but also what do we need to be budgeting for in the future? Because as I talked about, it is this journey. And so regular conversations help you plan out, okay, hey, we don't have it today to pull the trigger on X investment, but 6 months from now we will. And so that becomes another key part of it, in my opinion.
You're muted.
Thank you, Don. We had another question that came in through the chat that kind of goes with that, Ethan. And it was, if we have an IT security service provider, would we need to review plans that often?
I think you do, because that IT service provider might not realize some of the internal things that have happened or changed. So you as a business might know, hey, this changed, but if that IT service provider doesn't understand the changes, right, they could be flat-footed. I'll take an example. When I was on the IT service provider side, there was a business we serviced, and I thought we knew this business very well. Their primary business was truck leasing. And so we focused, as my IT service provider in cybersecurity, we focused on, keep their leasing part of their business up and running. Well, we finally had a meeting. They'd been a customer for ours for like a year plus, and we finally got them to sit down and talk to us. And we're like, okay, so here are our assumptions we've made, and here's what we've done to harden it. And they're like, why do you think that's the important thing? We're like, well, you're a truck leasing company. These are other truck leasing companies we work with do this. And they're like, yeah, actually, we make all of our money through our shop. And they had a large shop that, with mechanics who are working. And what we suddenly had to realize, we as that service provider, we had to pivot to making sure that those shop technicians could continue to be billable. And if you're not having those conversations on a regular basis, things could fall through the cracks that could have dire consequences.
I'd like to add something to that, Ethan, and I'll do this real quick. I know we're short on time, but it's not really a myth, but I think it's a misunderstanding that a lot of customers have with their service providers, that they think that if they sign on the dotted line for IT services, that they're automatically covered, their policies are written for them, their security cadences are taken care of with their reviews, their monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, all these different types of reviews. You're a partner with you enter into a partnership when you hire an MSP, a managed service provider. But the managed service provider does not remove your responsibility to your stakeholders to make sure your organization is safe. You need to be holding your MSP accountable for what they're supposed to do, but you also have to hold yourself accountable with these reviews and making sure that you have current policies in place. The MSP cannot write those for you because they're not running your business. They should have their own policies, but they won't be writing your policies for you unless they're doing that as a consultation.
Great.
No, that's a great point, Don. Yeah, it is a partnership.
Awesome. All right, that's all the time we have for questions. And it is time now for the giveaways. I know everybody's super excited for that. All right, so first we're going to give away, and our team, you'll actually be receiving an email from me for the winners. I'll just be reaching out to coordinate getting your prizes to you. So be on the lookout for that. But for our giveaway, the 20-ounce Yeti Rambler, if I had drumsticks, I go is going to Jennifer Goddard. So again, be on the lookout and I will be sending you an email. Next up is the Huntress Timbuktu backpack, and that is going to Kim Mack. And then finally, we've got our 35-ounce Yeti Rambler with the straw, and that is going to Melissa Beckford. So again, I will be reaching out to you all. You should be receiving an email from A. Atkins at Netranom to get your mailing addresses to ship that to you all. And definitely want to thank Huntress for providing these awesome giveaways for us. And so then...
Yep, I just wanted to make sure everybody had contact information for you all.
Yes, absolutely. So with that, if you guys have any questions or follow-up questions, here is, you can email Dawn personally at dpill@netranom.com. Or if you want to send us an email at Netranom, that's info@netranom.com. And then if you'd like to just check out our website, see what we're all about, our services. NetraCare isn't the only service that we provide. So if you'd like to check out our website, we just rebranded it. So we're super excited about that. So definitely check it out. And we just want to thank Ethan and Dawn for sharing their insights on these cybersecurity myths, and to you all for joining us today. We hope that this session has helped clear up some common cybersecurity myths and just gave you a better understanding of how to protect your business against these modern threats. And we would be happy to speak with you on a follow-up conversation. So again, take a quick screenshot of this last slide, and just thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.